Come home. Come home now. There is blood everywhere. Aamir is dead. Miriam, I need you to come home now. 10 years ago, these were the words that my mother shouted at me over the phone just 30 minutes after I'd left her. That phone call still haunts me every single day. I didn't understand what she meant. There's blood everywhere. How can my brother Ammer be dead? In disbelief, I rush back home. As I approach, I can see that our road is blocked off. I curse myself because I've got the highest heels on that morning. I take them off and I just run barefoot. I get stopped by the police. You can't go there, you can't go there. I say to them that I'm Ammer's sister and they let me through without any challenge. As I'm running down the street, I'm telling this police lady that there must be a grave mistake. Ammer is a good boy. He's innocent. He's never hurt anyone in his life. As we approach the house, I look on helplessly as the ambulances take my parents and Ammer away. You see, I was in disbelief. We lived in a quiet, leafy suburban part of Cardiff where nothing ever happened. It was only an hour ago that I had left the house at lunchtime. It was a sunny Sunday. I didn't notice anything. But shortly after I'd left in my car, 2 masked men rang the doorbell and forcibly entered our family home. They stabbed my brother to death, and my parents were also attacked trying to save his life. In an act that lasted less than 2 minutes, my brother died before even falling to the ground. In a case of mistaken identity, this became Cardiff's largest murder inquiry. Aamir thought he was answering the door to the Quran teacher. These 2 men quite simply just got the wrong door. If you're going to ask anyone who knew Aamir what he was like, they would tell you that he was a kind, funny, knowledgeable person. In fact, so knowledgeable, he had an encyclopedic knowledge about everything and will talk to you about anything, especially sports. Aamir had big dreams. He wanted to follow in his grandfather's footsteps. He was studying his A-levels and secured a place to study law. He wanted to be a lawyer and give back to those in need. He was an idealistic boy who just basically wanted to be of service to the world. On the cusp of becoming a man, he was just 2 months away from his 18th birthday. We used to say to Ammer, Ammer, whatever age you are, just remember you're always going to be the baby of the family. The youngest brother to 3 older sisters, we used to joke and say, Ammer, you have no chance. You don't just have 1 mum, in fact, you have 3. Ammer was the centre of our family. Shortly after Ammer had died, many people from the community came and told us stories about Ammer's life. But I'd like to share just one with you. An elderly lady had written us a letter. She told us about how one day she had fallen in the park opposite our house. Ammer rushed to her aid. She was taken aback by his kindness and empathy for somebody so young, and that stayed with her. Ammer never told us about this. This was Ammer. I was so fortunate because I was living with my parents because I was getting ready to move into my own home. On the morning of the attack was like any other Sunday. Ammer had woken up early. He was busy writing an essay because he came in to ask my father to check the work. On one of his breaks, he came into my room. He put his head on my shoulder and I affectionately put my arm around his. And as we were chatting, he asked me what I wanted for my birthday. I said to him, oh, Ammer, I don't need anything. You're my baby brother. I've got you. That's all I need. And I kissed him on his head and I said, Ammer, you're more like a son than a brother to me. I'm so thankful that I had that moment with him. I had some errands to do, so I decided to finish off my makeup in his room. I was talking about nonsensical things because he didn't even look up. But as I said goodbye, he raised his head and our eyes locked. That was the last ever moment I'd ever see Ammer alive. I was reunited with my parents at the hospital. By that time, the The whole place was full by people from the community. The doctor came in and confirmed that Aamir had died. In that moment, suddenly I was shrouded in darkness. The room went empty. My knees felt weak and I fell to the ground. I'd hit rock bottom. The rest of the day becomes a bit of a blur. What I do remember is just like flashes of memory, like a film. What I do remember though is at the end of the night, I was alone in my auntie's house and I remember thinking to myself, you're never going to see Aamir again. This is your worst nightmare and you thought you'd never survive this. But you have. You've got through today. And Miriam, you're going to survive this and you'll get through it. And you'll get through tomorrow. And with that hope and belief, I went to sleep that night. The next morning I woke up, still with that realization that Aamir is gone. But I also had that inner belief in myself. I will survive. So with that determination, I set myself tiny goals. Goal 1, get out of bed. Goal 2, walk down the stairs. For me, it was about gaining a sense of that control that I'd lost from the previous day. This is what survival meant for me. And it did help because as I set those tiny goals, I didn't plan for the whole day. For me, it was just getting through hour and hour and moving forward. And as a result of that, I didn't feel overwhelmed. But inside, I was broken. I'd lost my identity. I'd lost a part of me. And I knew that I had to rebuild a life without Aamir. But I was too scared to tell people how I felt. I didn't have the strength to reveal my true emotions. And quite frankly, I didn't have the time. I was worried about my family and my parents. So I decided to put on a mask of someone who is okay, who is strong, confident and resilient. I thought it'd be a sign of weakness if I showed anyone who I truly felt. So this mask served a purpose for me at that time. It was about survival. And in truth, it helped me. It helped me get through some of the most darkest moments of my life. It helped me get through Aamir's funeral. It helped me help my parents go through the most unimaginable grief that they were going through and the psychological trauma that they were suffering from. It helped me sit through 2 murder trials and an appeal case whilst I was staring at the 2 perpetrators in the eyes, patiently awaiting for justice. It helped me be strong in front of all of this media attention that we were not used to. The mask was good and the mask was working. But over time, people started making comments. They used to start saying, wow, Miriam, you're so strong. Miriam, I could never have gone through what you have. And the more they said that, the more I felt like a fraud. I was so scared that because of what they said, if they really understood the internal reality of what I was feeling and looked over this facade of normality that I created, they'd know that I'm suffering. So it became harder to take that mask off. Over time, I realized that I was becoming emotionally distant in other aspects of my life. 5 years after Ammer's death, I was blessed with my beautiful baby daughter. I'm in the hospital and everyone's around me, so happy. I'm looking at my daughter and tears start rolling down my face. I look up and everyone thinks that it's because I've just given birth to this beautiful baby. But the reality was that I was shrouded in darkness again. I was overwhelmed by the feeling of grief. I reminded myself that Aamir is not here. In that moment of vulnerability, what came to the forefront was that trauma that I was feeling, that pain. I was angry that Aamir was no longer here to meet his niece. I didn't like this, so I decided to put the mask back on. But what happened as a result was that I covered up the postnatal depression that I was suffering from, that was triggered by the emotional trauma that I was suffering. It was only a 1.5 years later that the catalyst of change really came. My daughter came to hug me, and I felt myself emotionally retreat. That fear of losing someone so important to me was so great because I already suffered so much loss that I felt myself emotionally retreat. So I did what I did best. I put the mask on, but I quickly realized that, Miriam, this isn't about survival. Just like that night when Amir passed away and that moment of realization, that moment came again. But rather than me saying, Miriam, you've got to survive, you've got to just act like you can get through this, the conversation had changed. Because now this wasn't about me. This wasn't about survival. This was about my daughter. This was about wanting to live life fully. I made that decision and commitment to myself, so I sought professional help. I went to see a therapist, and man, it was hard. I spent 3 months just literally in each session just crying. I was sobbing. I was wailing like I've never done. I found it so hard to express my emotions before that now, in that 1 hour session every week, I felt as if all I was doing was just releasing all of this pain. Pain that I felt as if I couldn't do in front of anybody else. Over time, though, as I was doing this, I felt less and less resistance to this feeling of vulnerability, this feeling of showing my real emotions to people, because what my perception of weakness was changing. Me showing my vulnerability made way for me to see the beauty in everything around me. I was releasing that trauma, but I was filling it up with love, and I chose that. I also realized my story was different to the one I thought that I had. My story of going through trauma was not going to be of pain. It was going to be of hope. It was going to be of love, because yes, I lost Aamir, but rather than thinking about the pain of losing him, I realized I have got love. I've got the love of his memories, this unconditional love that he gave me. I was able to look back on that morning when he put his head on my shoulder and smile and see the beauty in that moment. I was able to see the beauty in the present, and I was able to move forward. I realized that my process of healing was taking small steps in acknowledging my grief and my trauma. But by doing that, over time, I was allowing space for so much more. My process of healing helped, and I understand that grief will stay with me forever. But with my grief, I bring a power of story of strength. This story of the trauma I went through is what empowers me now, because I know I'm strong. I know I can get through anything. I survived the worst day of my life, and I know that I can survive every single day, but I choose to do it with love. I choose to carry Amir's love around with me. He surrounds me every single moment of the day, and that's my story of survival. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.